Hello guys, gals and non-binary pals, I'm Dips and welcome back to the web, where today we're going to be designing a very cool themed domination build for our favourite scaly boys from the lizardmen, the skinks. So in this build we are obviously allowed to use the skink units, which gives us plenty of great utility and chaff potential. Any of the dinosaurs, provided they don't have any of the saurus attached to them, which is pretty bad news for our land-based cavalry. And finally we can also use the croc-score units, which technically aren't skinks, but are interconnected with them in a very big way in the lore, and it feels like such a shame not to include them since they don't get much limelight in the, meta. Since it will take me absolutely ages to cover every single unit I can and can't use, here's a quick breakdown in tier list form for all the non-hero and non-lord units. Basically, we're missing the Slan, the Saurus, and all of our land-based cavalry, apart from the cold ones. So this is going to bite us particularly hard for our Lord and Hero options and a bunch of other stuff. So let's get to theory crafting. So let's first consider the strengths and weaknesses of our available units. Firstly, we have lots of extra capture weight with our skinks, and they're also a very mobile infantry corps. Skinks have a lot of strong utility, and there are quite a few of them, so they're far from useless if we pay them right. Dinosaurs are our other big player, and while they seem like a bit of a saving grace, half of them on that list are pretty much useless from the get-go, either due to pricing or just being too slow and we can't protect them with our lack of cavalry. Croc-score are basically a meme in the current patch, so they're just kind of there to keep things tied down with their mass, but I will include some because I do love the models. While immediately damage and our front line might seem like huge issues, the dinosaurs and Ripidactyls are going to bring more than enough damage, and we really shouldn't ever be clashing our front lines like a traditional lizardmen build. So that's not a huge issue. Instead, the real pain is definitely going to be enemy cavalry and enemy high-tier infantry. Apart from cold ones, all our other land-based cavalry in the lizardman faction comes with Saurus, so that's a no-go. If you are trying this at home or playing along, if you feel like cheating a little bit, I would recommend taking Saurus Cold One riders with spears, as they're going to make your life a lot easier for protecting our large assets with their anti-large and mass, and also just preventing sniping. But I'm not going to here. As a result, that leaves us pretty vulnerable to shock cav, chariots, and dragons, which are just going to love to run through our really fragile infantry and terror out them. So the name of the game here is to punish sniping, bring lots of anti-large, and keep ourselves mobile enough that we won't be forced to take trades we don't want to take. So here's the build. So, I can already hear a lot of people typing very angry comments about this build, so just let me explain before you press enter on those. Why do we have two ancient salamanders, since they are kind of a notoriously dogshit unit, to be perfectly honest with you? And the answer to that is that we want to keep things as mobile as possible. These guys have 75 speed, they're very good, and also they shoot over units. So we do have a total of 10 skink cohorts on the field. I am not in any kind of macro genius to be trying to get line of sight for straight lines on these guys. So I really like ancient salamanders. They're really good. They're explosive, armor piercing, making them fantastic against tight formations like high tier infantry, which is one of the big things we were having issues with. And they're great for also applying to, apply pressure to objectives, right? Your opponent can't just sit on the objective. You're going to be constantly shelling them with these guys like little mortars. Apart from that, also second thing, people saying, where are the chameleon skinks? Which is fair, because I tried using chameleon skinks quite a few times, but I found we don't have any cavalry to really protect them with. Normally what would happen is we'd bring out the chameleon skinks, they'd get a couple shots off, get 200 value or something, and then get run down by some mid-tier cavalry units, because feral cold ones they get torn to shreds. They just can't protect them, and if you want to bring them in reinforcements, you could probably get rid of some of these skinks and bring them instead. Probably have alright use, but yeah, you just can't protect them from cavalry, especially in the early engagements. Apart from that, and probably the biggest thing, people are saying, where's Tehenowin? It's kind of a given we'd use Tehenowin as the lord because, well, Tehenowin's the skink lord. The only skink lord we have, really, besides the Red Crested Skink Chief. But as our pseudo-lord, we have gone with the Skink Oracle, and that's purely because Flock of Doom is the main spell we want to bring out of the Lore of Beasts. It's a good damage spell against high armor. And this also gives us access to healing and a flat buff to melee attack, melee defense, which is great on these guys, great on these guys, great on the Croc-score, Ripidactyls, Skinks, Feral Cold ones. Really powerful and potent. And if we did take Tehenowin, we wouldn't get this, and we wouldn't get the regeneration, which means we have to bring a Rev Crystal, which means we can't bring one of the Salamanders. It was a whole deal. So I found this was kind of the most best way to go about it. You have the Skink Oracle, you have the Red Crested Skink Chief as our actual lord. They're on a horned one, which makes them really good anti-large cavalry. They bring poison, they're an alright duelist. Make sure they don't die if you do bring them out, but they're not that expensive. Like, you bring out this guy or the Croc Score, you know? Whatever's more useful. If that still hasn't justified it, feel free to like pop a comment down below on what you think I've done wrong and what you would use instead. But on to the less controversial stuff, I suppose. Colostodon Hunters are a regiment of renown for the Ripidactyl Riders. Fantastic unit. In fact, probably one of the best anti-large units in the entire game. They can fly, they're very maneuverable, they're very fragile, so always make sure to countercharge with them. Don't send them into straight engagements, they will die and won't pay for themselves. But send them in, pop Toad Rage, absolutely beautiful unit. And obviously one of our big issues was dealing with cavalry, these guys are great for that. Apart from that, the Cohort of Sotek is unbreakable, and has refused to die, so they're a great frontline unit. Drop a comment of Cassandora on them, with this is up, none of them will die. But they will take damage, so be wary of that. But it's good to have an unbreakable unit since these guys do tend to rout off. Apart from that, we did bring 10 units of Skink Cohort. We could have brought more Red Crested Skinks, but these guys are mainly chaff. We kind of want them to die. And these guys just don't pay for themselves. Like, one Red Crested Skink is worth 2 Skink Cohorts, essentially. And that just doesn't kind of play out in the actual game. Apart from that, Ripidactyl Riders are a very speedy anti-infantry. They're going to be clearing the majority of chaff. They're very good. They have very high armor piercing, very high bonus versus infantry. They're very quick, so they can move between points. Generally really fantastic. Croxagore, I wanted to add more, but this is really the most I could kind of justify. They're just here for their mass, more of a utility piece than to actually do damage. And same with the Chameleon Stalker. They're here because they have Stalk, not because they're particularly useful. Actually, pretty poor unit. Pterodon Riders are in every build I make for the Lizardmen. They're great for getting rid of artillery. You can drop rocks on artillery, you can drop rocks on chaff. Just clears it out really quickly. And yeah, Feral Cold Ones are our only cavalry. Still worth having. They're very cheap. They're good armor piercing damage. And because they do have quite a bit more mass, 700 to the like 60 of Skinks, 90 of Skinks, they're great for just trapping infantry lords on foot. So just quickly, I do have a lot of fun making these sorts of builds. In fact, themed builds are kind of where I derive most of my enjoyment of Total War Warhammer. So if you would like to see more of these, I do have a specific build for a Dread Saurian and also one centered around Croxagores. Then feel free to subscribe for that. It's really the best way to see those videos, as it's a pretty small channel. You probably won't see us again otherwise. Essentially with this build, you want to focus on make sure you use your mobility. Nothing on this build has less than 46. Yeah, 46 speed is the slowest. Even the Croc Score have that. Actually pretty quick. So make sure you utilize that mobility. This isn't like your normal Saurus build. You can't clash your front line. And kind of playing into that, try and threaten all 3 points at once, but play for 2, right? So it's fine to have 300 or 600 gold sitting on a point where they're quite heavily defending, as long as they're not in battle, just kind of sitting on the sideline. Because if they pull stuff off, you can send like the Ripidactyl Riders over, they'll help clear the stuff off, and these guys capture weight will make sure it's captured very quickly. Apart from that, make sure your expensive stuff is properly, not sniped. Like if they go for these guys, make sure these 3 are shooting in. If it's the opposite, like the Ancient Salamanders getting targeted, the Colostodon Hunters can come in alongside with some chaff, right? Make sure they're not sniping your expensive stuff, because I probably might show you guys a game where you can actually go down on gold value quite a bit, but if it's gold value on the Skinks and not gold value on these guys, it really doesn't matter, because these guys aren't doing damage. You can just keep summoning them out forever, as long as you're doing enough damage to their infantry. Anyway, let's go over to the game. Cool, so for the practice game, this one is definitely a bit of a short one. Spoiler alert, they do end up surrendering just because we traded so well. I'm probably going to do this one. It's about 6 minutes, I think, in total. And I'm just going to include it because, well, it's nice to have some practical examples, and I don't want the video to go too long, so I won't include like a full game. Just a bit of a taster to see how the strategy works and kind of how it's meant to play. If you guys are interested, there is a much longer game, sorry. You know, like a standard game at 15-20 minutes, where I actually lose the value trading, but still do quite well. So it is definitely possible not to like stomp early and get an early surrender. And interesting, this is actually a very cavalry heavy build here. So it is like kind of what we were scared of. We got, well, great swords aren't high tier infantry, but they're mid tier infantry. There's plenty of AoE chaff clearing potential here. And they do have the Royal Demigryph Knights, the Regiment of Renown version. So it is definitely a bit of a trial by fire here. We also versing Boris Todbringer, who's going to absolutely crump Skink Oracle if he gets the chance. But we do have quite a bit of range, and 85 armor is not the worst. But so we come in here. Obviously, these guys are really good for clearing out the low armor chaff. They are also AoE, but the Ancient Salamanders do get some good picks, and that's weird. Why are they losing leadership? Oh, artillery, right, because these guys are shooting at them. Just to be completely transparent, obviously I'm not going to show you a game where I lost for the only game. With this build I was 6-2-2, as in 6 games won, 2 games lost, and 2 games dodged. And those 2 dodged games were against the dwarves. This build performs really terribly against them. You do slightly better if you replace your guys with red-crested skinks, but I digress. Obviously Boris is coming here trying to get some early picks. I don't really mind. We're getting some shots in with the Skink Oracle, if only he would actually hit. Oh, whiffed that one barely, but the idea basically here is that we tried to push through here. We want to secure that bottom objective and then push into the top objective here, because they're both open. Now, talking about that utility with the Chameleon Stalkers, they're obviously now on their way to take that point, and because they're invisible, the opponent doesn't actually notice that for quite a little bit. These 2 units with a huge amount of infantry weight are just waiting down there, and Boris is kind of wasting his time getting shot at going in here. Now, you're probably wondering why I haven't dove the enemy Lord with the Ripidactyl Riders. They would do pretty well, but I don't want to get countercharged by all these high-tier cavalry, because these guys, the Demigryph Knights actually look really cool. But yeah, they will absolutely crush basically these guys and everything in the build. So we're just kind of playing it safe. Silver Bullets there, also really great. They have Stalk, so I didn't realize they were there in the game. And also a good reason not to kind of go too ballsy with the Skink Oracle or these guys, because they will get the hurt put on them very quickly. Like I said, there is quite a bit of cavalry here. Zinkla's Reichsguard. One of the Outriders still alive, the other has been effectively killed. Both Salamanders are here. Obviously, this Salamander's probably a little bit too far pushed up, so we do move them back a little bit as these Outriders come in. And the Cohort of Sotek's just taking a bit of damage, but just applying pressure. Obviously, we do currently have a double cap. The Chameleon Stalkers are up here. We are ready to push. There we go. So they've moved off this point. We're going to try and... Well, Boris is coming in. They're going to try and push with their own units. See, immediately as Boris goes in to the Ancient Salamander, we bring in the Ripidactyl Riders. We engage with the red-crested skinks to buffer out a little bit so these guys don't get immediately killed. And Zinkla's Reichsguard is kind of just charging skink cohorts, which you got to wonder if that's like a useful, part of the time. We do get a wonderful overcasted Flock of Doom. Flock of Doom doesn't actually increase damage with overcasting, but it does increase the range, so it can be quite useful if this guy isn't in the right position. Apart from that, we are doing quite well against the Royal Andorf Knights. This Ancient Salamander is kind of getting beat up a little bit by the Demigryph Knights. So I really should probably send them into melee just to scare these guys off, since they will get terror at it, since they only have fear, not terror. Apart from that, we are pushing on to this point. We are taking it, I think slowly, or maybe not anymore. Either way, we are going to try and get into, or charge this skink cohort into the silver bullets. Once we're in melee, things will be a lot closer. And we can get a bit of a crush going, because we do have the Croxagore here, who currently are in... The poison from the javelins is quite nice, but they're being forced to push back, basically. This is a good pick here, and, well, Boris is getting torn to pieces. Now, obviously, when this happens, they want to bring the silver bullets round to bear on the Ripidactyl Riders, because they're quite fragile. But we have forced them to basically take a charge from these guys. Isn't going to do much damage, but they can't shoot and do whatever they're doing. Basically, down here, things have gone very, very well. We're just scaring off the Demigryph Knights, which are terrified. Like I said, terror beats fear. If you have fear, you can't be... that is the big issue with the Salamanders. They absolutely do decimate your own units. Thank God these guys are unbreakable. But yeah, we have a pretty solid objective here. We do have the second set of Ripidactyl Riders, since one was basically taken off to go push into the silver bullets. The second one's here with Toad Rage and Harmonic Convergence with 80 melee attack. And some pretty strong, 200 basically weapon strength against a large unit, so definitely very strong. They are just now bringing the Empire Knights up here, and there was no point holding the Chameleon Stalkers up here. We are going to bring them back. Like I said, you don't need to hold 3 objectives at all times, you just need to pressure them. This was fantastic, and we were really lucky. I'm not sure if they brought a Magician, or maybe they were just in the background. This kind of crushing probably isn't a great meta play, but yeah, it's not terrible. I mean, they're all pretty spread out, and the only thing that would really get killed with like a Comet of Cassandora or a Burning Head would probably be the Skinks, which isn't a huge issue. Halberdiers, not a huge issue for this build, and that's it. They tapped out there, which is pretty fair because as we look at the, well, if you had a look at the Valorage rating, we were about 3,000 up, I think, the last I checked. But that's kind of the way you want to go. There, like I said, there is a slightly, but much longer that game that kind of shows how to use the build better, and I might just release that as a separate thing. I'll probably pop it in the top right if I do end up doing that. But that's the basic idea, right? Skink Oracle got fantastic damage. A lot of that would have been the Flock of Doom and just shooting into the large units. And I think it went really, to that kind of live test, performed really well because this was a very elite cavalry kind of game, you know? Black Line Hellblasters probably wouldn't have been great. They definitely seem to be expecting like the Saurus front lines. They brought the Great Swords. And these guys were here to kind of, well, kill the Saurus and also destroy any kind of large monsters. But the fact the large monsters are our back line and the Ripidactyl Riders are flying seems to give us definitely that mobility advantage. Apart from that, Ripidactyl Riders, like the ones that someone did pretty well. Croxigors never pay for themselves. That's just a fact of life. They did a really good job keeping things kind of stuck together. These guys didn't see combat, but like I said, the utility of these two units really, they don't need to pay for themselves, it's just utility, the entire thing. And there we have it. Just thank you everyone for watching. I'm a bit sorry for the irregular posting at the moment, just being tied up with some other stuff. And thank you everyone for the support and the patience. The next project I'm probably going to pop out on the channel is actually a Croc Score Hero, which I've been messing around with in the background. Still sorting out the kinks a little bit with the whole making heroes, but I think there's a lot of potential there, especially for some great videos. So I'll probably be asking for some unique design inspiration, skill trees, and once we get past the sort of banal basic one, maybe some other types of Croc Score Heroes. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Dips out.